All right, I got 12 o'clock, y'all. So, how's everybody doing? Y'all doing all right? Good, good. Well, my name is Christopher Fleming. I am the manager at Richland Library Lower Richland down in Hopkins. And today I will be presenting on libraries as systems, understanding the hidden structure of service. So, an introduction to systems thinking. So, I recently took a class at MIT on systems thinking. And what was a little bit interesting about that class was I was the only one that represented public libraries. I'm the only one that pretty much represented any kind of service industry because everybody else was in manufacturing, logistics, how to take this widget from here to this final product here. And a lot of that logic was tied around the systems thinking of the pipeline between from idea to finished product. So I had to do a little bit of working out to apply similar thinking to service jobs like we do, especially here in the public library. And systems thinking definitely applies to public libraries, just like any other industry out there. So, first of all, like what is systems thinking? Thank you so much, y'all. I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? Once a colleague, always a colleague. You know what I'm saying? Becca used to work with me down there in Lower Richland. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that. So systems thinking is the consideration of individual pieces working together as a cohesive whole. Nothing works by itself or works in a vacuum when you're in an organization. There's an African philosophy that ties along with it called Ubuntu. And Ubuntu means I am because we are. So if we're in an organization like within that African context, right? And let's say the village elder is sick and is possibly about to pass away. Now the systems thinking of that is, if this elder passes away, we just lost a living library of our people's history. Because within this context, in the African context, we weren't illiterate, we were pre-literate. So a lot of our stories were shared orally. So to make a buffer for that system, we either A, have to do whatever we can to make sure the elder lives so we can continue those stories. Or B, make sure that we rise up the next generation that has that sat at the feet of the elder, to know all of the stories and lessons and things like that, the history of our people, and that torch can continue to burn through generations, even as the griots of each age passes that flame of knowledge on to the next person, to the next person, and to the next person. So that's the similar thing that we have here within libraries, because the library system works by individual systems working together. You'll know there's an issue within your system if HR has an issue. It kind of has this way of trickling down. You'll definitely know if you have an issue, if finance have an issue, and that check is a little bit lighter than what it's supposed to be, because you know, like, hold on, now you're ready to call the boss. Like, yo, what's going on here? There's a chunk of my rent that's missing right here, you know? And that goes downward and upward. And if that's left unabated, what that can do is that can affect the morale and the trust of the people within that organization. So that's something that we don't want to happen. So we have to stay cognizant of the systems and the systems within systems that work together to not only make sure our patrons have the best experience that they can have, but make sure that each employee on each level also has a pleasurable experience of working every day. Because if they don't have a pleasant experience of working every day, then they might come into it all grumpy, and then they might say the wrong thing to the customer. Now the customer's mad. Now the customer's going to your manager. It all works together. It all goes hand in hand. So we got to be sure that we are aware of that flow. So I broke it down to my staff like this: top-down communication flow, I think I might jump on the board real quick. All right? So this is going to be a real basic understanding of it right here, right? So let's say this block right here is just work, library work in general. But what we have at the top is the executive director right here, whomever your executive director is. So when they get this work, what they have to do is they have to split that. This is the work that the executive director does, and this is the work that's going to be delegated down the structure here. So now that we go down here, let's say I'm gonna just make it super easy. It's a small library branch. It goes straight from the executive directors to the branch managers here, right? So now it goes down to the managers. This is the managerial section right here. So now they too have only work that they can do. That's the manager work right here. But then there's also work that they're gonna have to delegate down the line. So that goes down right here, maybe to your supervisors. So this is the supervisor level right here. You guessed it. They got work that only they can do, but then they also have to delegate the work to the rest of the staff. And this is the frontline staff who gets the day-to-day work down here. This is how so executive director has a vision for the library, the grand vision. This is that grand vision. This is part of the vision that he or she can do, and it goes down and then goes back up. Now, this is it going down. This is what I want for the library: directors, emails, one-on-ones, meetings. It actually being done at the front level staff. Now, hopefully, you also have bottom-up feedback too. Because sometimes the migration from vision to reality doesn't move as smoothly as one would like. It's easy to have a vision, but boy, when it gets to this right here, this is what I call reality. Sometimes things get a little crazier right here. So we want to make sure that when the vision comes down here, that feedback can also come up here. So the frontline staff might say, you know what, supervisors, this worked, but this didn't work. So okay, go back up the chain so that the executive director, the frontline staff will tell the supervisor tell the manager tells the executive director, or however it works for y'all particular thing like that. And that's it. Everything happy, everything works perfectly, the end, thank you, good night. We all know that that's not how it happens at all, right? Because one thing we got to understand is the communication, the migration of vision from here to down here. That's one system, that's called communication. But there's another system that tends to get overlooked. That's comprehension. Keep this in your mind, because how many people are managers in here? Communication does not necessarily equal comprehension. See, I'm talking to the choir here. Communication does not necessarily mean comprehension. Okay, let's roll with that for a second here, because you think you explained everything black and white. They might have heard it in fuchsia and pink. You like what? Sometimes, all right, we're friends here, right? Okay. And none of my current staff work with me. Cool. So, you ever had some of those moments where you give a directive down and then the feedback comes up and you're like, how in the world did they get that out of what I said? I don't know what I said. I put it in the email. The directive came down and said, greet every patron. What they heard was, beat every customer. So now the executive director's coming in, visiting your branch, a bunch of patrons walking around with black eyes and everything like this, and the staff is like, yeah, we doing what you told us to do. You're like, no, that's not what I told you. I told you to greet, not beat every customer. So we got to understand and be sure that our communication is being comprehended. How do we do things like that? That's the importance of the one-on-ones. That's the importance of the team meetings. That's the importance of make the emails and all of that good stuff right here, just to make sure that what's being communicated is what's also being comprehended. And what's being comprehended is actually what's being put into practice. Because it's like playing, like the game telephone, you whisper this right here, and by the time it gets back there, it's something totally different. That's what we're dealing with. And we just gotta be aware of that just happens. So what we do in systems thinking is try to think, what safeguards can we put in place to at least try to get this communication to go seamlessly from here to where it needs to be and from there back. Because again, the communication goes back and forth, and we want to make sure we are actually hearing what's being said and all of that there. So again, communication is not comprehension. All right. I done put this like on 3 slides right here just to kind of run it home. Just in case you missed it right here. But again, I want to just be sure that people really understand this, because what happens is this. Sometimes a level of an employee's competence gets rated based off of a miscommunication. So that's the next step right here. We're going to talk about employee competence and how systems thinking might, what does systems thinking think about employee competence here? So one of the things that I tend to think about when I have a struggling employee is this an issue of competence, or is this an issue of environment? Because nothing comes into fruition without an environment that's cultivating it. So how I worded it another way, is that employee's failure on them, or is it some things like how the onboarding process is designed? And it's easy to blame competence because it's kind of away from you. This person it just didn't work out. They don't know what they're doing. It has nothing to do with me because I'm perfect. And I know I explained it in black and white. Right? I say greet every patron. But it doesn't always get translated that way. But in this particular thing, I want to look at systems thinking when it comes to the onboarding process. So 3 of the things of system thinking is form, function, and emergence. Shout out to Becca for that cup of water. I needed it right there at that moment. Thank you. Form. What does the process look like? Function. What is the purpose? That's a big one. Why are we doing what we're doing? What does success look like? And then emergence. What does the employee look like once onboarding is over? Just using onboarding as an example, but this can be used for any program or project or whatever it is that you have going on. You have to know what it looks like, what's the purpose, and what do you hope to come out of it? What do you hope to emerge out of you doing this thing? Because if any of these things are missing, a bunch of ambiguity happens in between, and that's where miscommunication, comprehension, and things like that can start getting kind of crazy, okay? So, sometimes onboarding does not equal training. Sometimes onboarding does not equal training. But what if that was the vision and the managers What if the manager didn't understand that? That onboarding doesn't equal training. So the person comes to onboarding, they go through the onboarding process, they get to the branch, and they don't know how to work Polaris. They're like, well, what you was doing at onboarding this whole time? Well, the administration might be like, well, we was, showing them the culture of the library, introducing them to, certain department heads and getting their information in the computers and so on and so forth. But training, that's on you, manager. But if that communication isn't there, or if it was communicated in black and white and received in fuchsia and lime green, there's that disconnect right there. And then you realize that onboarding doesn't necessarily mean training. But this is the conversation that needs to be had at the administrative level of what does onboarding look like? What's the form, function, and the emergence? Because maybe from there, at some point, you can see how things might need to be adjusted. Because none of this thing is static. Because, it might be kind of wonky right now, but things can be fixed if we sit down and have a conversation with one another. So if you get a certificate at the end of onboarding, the question to ask is, what does that mean? Does it mean that they're trained in the basics of the circulation software? Does it mean that their IT credentials are ready to go when they go to their branches? Or does it just mean that they are beginning to understand the library culture? There are no wrong answers here, but it has to be defined from your administration down to your managers and all of that good stuff, so everybody can be on the same accord of understanding what exactly does being onboarded actually means. So the solution again is have the form, function, and emergence clearly defined. If onboarding to this organization is orientation to the culture, all right, then that's what it is here. And if it is, that then gives space to come to the managers to create a streamlined process on what training actually looks like. To have them ready at day one or within the first couple of weeks of having this new person on. I know this from direct experience, y'all. I had one of my most recent employees had a rough onboarding time, and it translated into the day-to-day workings of everything. I knew this person was smart. They got their masters too and all that good stuff, but certain things wasn't clicking. So I said, well, before I mess around and fire this person and stuff like that, let me step back and see what's really going on here. I said, tell me what your onboarding process was like. There it is. So I told this person, if we were to take on someone else onto our team, what training would you ensure that they got that you didn't have? So this employee created a whole training manual for our next new employee, and things went a whole lot smoother from there. And then, I passed that along up the ladder right there and stuff like that as well. But now look at it here. So 1 is communication, 2 was a little bit of empathy there. And then, hearing the issue that was going on at hand, giving them an opportunity to create a solution for themselves. So now they got more buy-in with the library itself. All of these things work hand in hand as a system to help embolden that employee, help embolden our gaps, fix our gaps, and keep things as rolling as smoothly as possible. So now, let's go into systems thinking and administration. So the role of administration is design and redesign. This is where all the vision initially starts at. I'll give you a personal example. When Tamara King took executive director here, she had a town hall, right, for I guess officially introducing herself and all of that good stuff, right? I told all my staff, I said, y'all better be sure y'all sitting front and center with pen and paper. I had a tape recorder and whatever, things like that, because this is where the vision that Tamara has is going to be said here. Now, we have to look at it through the lens of Lower Richland. I'm in a semi-rural area. So there's that vision that she has, but we also have to look at it through the lens of our particular community and how we can take the aggregate idea that she has and place it within the specifics of Hopkins, South Carolina. So the way that we do that is, okay, I hear what she's saying. I'm filtering it through my lens as leader of the branch, but I also want it filtered through my staff's eyes too, because I want them to give me feel. Yo, what did you hear? What did you hear specifically? Because I have my things that I care about the most, which is literacy. So I'm looking like, all right, where can we fit this at? But someone else might love the arts or science or whatever the case is. So always keep the door of communication open, the system of communication open, so that your employees will feel valued in the overall direction of the branch. Because the moment that they feel disconnected is the moment that they are disconnected. And we all can't run it ourselves. That's the reason we have staff. So there's the essential duties that have to be done, but also give a little bit of empowerment to the people under you so they know that they can come up with an idea and they can bring it to you. Now, whether you do it or not, that's on you. But at least let that door be open, that you know that they are being listened to. And that's what's going to help things move a little bit more smoothly. So again, that redesign comes from the top, the form, the function, and the emergence. What does it look like? What's the point? Let me stop right here. What's the point? What's the point? I just want that thought to just float through your mind. Because we do program, but what's the point? What's the purpose of it? I was in a meeting, we were talking about the community refrigerators and all of that good stuff. Dope idea, but what's the point? Because problems that we were having is, people started monopolizing the refrigerators, taking up all the food and all of that. And we don't want to police the free food that we're giving. But it's like, you know what? You might need to rethink about the words that we're using, because words have power. Is it policing, or is it just good stewardship over the limited things that we do have? So yeah, my perspective was we're being good stewards over the free food that we're giving out to the community. Now, I had to double back and say, you know what? What's the form, function, and emergence of the library itself? We're not a food bank. We're not Harvest Hope. We're not SNAP. We're not WIC. So any food-based programs that we have is just a little supplementary thing to help fill your stomach for the day, not for the week. So maybe what we can do with that is, at the refrigerators that we have, make sure that we have flyers for Harvest Hope that's down the street over here, information to SNAP, information to WIC, and those things, because their form, function, and emergence is actually feeding you through the month. I'm just trying to give you an apple for the day. So the library has to understand its own form, function, and emergence. Why are we here? Generally speaking, libraries are hubs of information, open access for people to come in freely and all that good stuff. So when we do things like food programs and things like that, that can be a part of it, but that's not our main focus. So if we mess around and act as if that is our main focus, we might mess around and lose some of our actual focus that's supposed to be on our actual function, which is, what is the point? Our point, our reason of being. That's a line that we have to be sure that we stay on. Because if we lose our purpose trying to cover somebody else's purpose, the whole ship might go down. So that comes to systems thinking and community engagement. See how we use all together. I thought I'd be good with that. But systems thinking and community engagement. So now this is where it gets a little tricky, because I don't know if y'all had the same issues that I had. I would love to partner with other organizations, but sometimes that is some of the hardest things to do. My branch is set in the middle of like 6 schools. My library is right here, literally right across the street. Right across the street is Lower Richland High School. Down the street over here, Horror Hill Elementary, Southeast Middle, right over here, Hopkins Elementary, Hopkins Middle, and just a little bit over there is Gaston Elementary. But boy, let me tell you something. Working with schools, especially the high school, the one that's the closest, that street might as well be as long and wide as Timbuktu. But you kind of gotta respect it a little bit, because they have their own form, function, and emergence that they got going on too. They get new principals, new leadership, new functions, new this, new that. Kids might be fighting in the cafeteria over here. There's a lot of things going on. And if y'all know what happened the other day in the Lower Richland area, there was like a shooting, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of stuff to go on. So it can be a little bit difficult to get everybody on the same page, because we all have our own siloed problems. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to bring those things together for the common good. But again, I touched on it a little bit earlier. Self-awareness is key. We got to know who we are and what it is that we do. The library generally, again, is a hub of information, but we're not the source necessarily of a lot of information. We're the facilitators of it. So again, we got to know our position and be sure that we're acting in the appropriate role to give our patrons the appropriate experience, because we're acting in the function in which we were created. It's easy to step out of it because, we're superheroes. We want to do everything. We want to fix the whole world's problems. But, I feel you, but we got to kind of narrow it down within the purview of the library. But this is the importance of community partnerships, because when they work well, they work well. If you're able to get this person and this person aligned for a particular goal, chef's kiss. If we can get to that point. So that's like an example that I had here. It's like, because between I told you about all the schools, but we also have a gang of daycares in the Lower Richland area too. So I was like, we gotta be able to work together somehow, because we all have similar functions, and we have similar forms, and we have similar emergencies of what we want to do. We want the world to be more literate. We want the world to learn more, know more, and do more. So there has to be a way that we can work. But again, it's the silo problem, because I got a lot of problems, working at the library. Not, me personally. I mean, I might, what I'm saying? But, the person running this daycare got to make sure that everybody's paying every week, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things to juggle. And this is one thing that I did here. One time there was a meeting at one of the local elementary schools for community leaders and all of that good stuff. We had a breakfast, and we just was talking and stuff like that. What I did in my systems thinking was saying, what gaps does the school have that the library can fill? Because again, we have similar forms, but we're not the same. We have similar functions, but we're not the same. We have similar emergence, but we're not the same. My particular view as the leader of my branch is I love literacy, and I want to intervene as early as possible. So the gap that I saw there was, all right, let me team up with our education studio. We bring the Reading Skills Club to my branch to dates every summer for the rising third graders, and I created a direct pipeline from Laurel Hill to my branch. Why Laurel Hill? Because they had the worst literacy rates. They went from below average to average the last year, by the way. I don't know what was due to our little 12 students, but I'm going to just say that we was the one that rounded it up. You know what I'm saying? But there was also churches there. I was like, I live in the country, y'all. You heard I say the country. And one thing that country people going to do is they're going to go to some church. So if you want to reach them country people, you might want to holler at some of them pastors. So, on Sunday when they talk about, they put up the announcements and all of that good stuff, you might want to slide the library announcement of the Reading Skills Club or whatever you got going on, because they might not go to your library initially, but most times out of 10, they might go to church. And then that's how they get exposed to what's going on in your area. One hand washes the other. That's why it's good to build networks and relationships with fellow leaders within your community. And then, and that's if everything works well. Sometimes we just don't get along with people. And that ruins the whole relationship sometimes. And that, my friends, is called the human element. All right? Now, sometimes it is what it is. You do what you gotta, you do what you can. That's it. So, but let's think about the human element when it came to employee competence. And the human element, me, you, my boss, your boss, our bosses together and all that good stuff. And sometimes we lose sight that we're humans behind these titles. And this is the interesting point when it comes to leadership, is that person that you're dealing with was once a child. And some children was raised in encouraging environments. Some children were not. The thing is, both of them grew up, applied for your library, and got the job. So these are things that you got to kind of think of when you widen your view of systems thinking. Because that system of childhood, whether it's this or that, help build the adult that you're dealing with. So these are sometimes things to consider. I be telling my staff, I'm like, yo, you say you want to get into management. Are you sure you're ready to be a psychologist, sociologist, philosopher, and all of these things at once? Because there's a lot of things to consider. I had a staff member, just life. You feel me? Sometimes life life be life. Home insecurity, food insecurity, with child, trying to do what you got to do, and still try to come into work every day with a smile. But then you was like, but real quick you want to say, nah, this person's incompetent. Like they don't know what they don't. But no, there's an environment that caused that emergence. This is the importance sometimes with your one-on-ones. I'm not saying become a therapist. But if you just open up the door, like the gentleman was talking about earlier, with a little bit of vulnerability, yourself with themselves. Let each other remind each other that we're human beings and we're all going through it at some level. I said, look, I'm going to try to give you a life raft as long as possible for you to get life kind of balanced. I said, but you got to understand that the essential duties are the essential duties. The library is kind of a weird place because I come from retail management. They'll cut your ass off quick. I don't care what you got going on. You see what I'm saying? And I had mixed success in the retail world because I'm an empathetic soul. And I see the whole human as a, human. And they're like, nah, we ain't got time for that. Make sure you meet the metrics and all that good stuff. And it sounds cold, but there's a part of it that's true to that. You can't be so empathetic that you lose the goal of what the overall organization is. System thinking or not, sometimes people are just incompetent. And you have to remove that person. That's part of the game. But me, I want to make sure that I did everything in human possible to make sure that this person is successful. Yo, tell me a little bit about your life. What's your goals here? What do you want to do? And once you get to learn that person a little bit more, or you start to see patterns. I say, oh, this person bossy. All right, we're going to put her at the head of this particular program and have this person lead this initiative. Go even deeper. No, I'm going to have you on the second chair and have someone else lead so you can learn how to be humble sometimes and sit down somewhere. It might be rough, but this is human development. Because you went through your whole life, that childhood, adulthood, nobody ever checking you. Call me Nike. Check. Feel me? Because my name is on the website, not yours. Understand that. Respectfully, of course. But I love the person enough to try to take the good that's out of that bossiness to say you have leadership qualities, though. So let's see if we can, move that a little bit over here. And then I got someone that's super shy. Great employee, does one of the greatest works ever. I said, you gotta learn how to brag on yourself, though. If you want to move up and around this library system, you gotta learn how to talk your trash like, I've been doing this for X amount of years and I'm great at it. That's why you're not getting the results that you want at the interview. This is your time to brag on yourself right here. So we had one-on-ones. I said, tell me about all the things that you did, because you've been here even longer than me. I've been here for 11 years, and you've been here longer than me. Tell me about this. And we worded it together, and this particular staff member had a phone interview yesterday. So proud to hear that. I said, how's it feel? Yeah, it's okay to talk great about yourself, because this world make it seem like, oh, no, talk great about yourself. Nah, not here. Talk, boost yourself up while I boost you up and things like that. But if you have a shy person, find out what they're passionate about, because they might be shy on 99 things, but they might love art. So, okay, shy person, why don't you do an art program? Next thing you know, you might think they're the most extroverted person ever because you have aligned them with something that they're passionate about. Or, it still might not work. Okay, well, shy person, I'm going to enroll you in public speaking class. I'm going to enroll you in leadership class. This is what I'm doing currently right now. I'm going through LinkedIn Learning. I have 5 other staff outside of myself. I've noticed patterns of each of them, and I'm aligning them with lessons that they can get from LinkedIn Learning. Not only that, I'm making sure that it's the professional certificate route, so it will look the best that it can be on their CV once they're done with it. Because whether you grow within the library or outside of the library, I want to make sure that you're good. And it's all about human development as well. That in turn builds trust that we have in our team. I swear it's almost too much, because I swear we share a lot of information. A lot of information. I was like, fam, you can just say you're taking PTO. I don't need to know why. But I kind of love it too, because I'm glad that you feel comfortable enough to tell me. That's what's up. So I deal with it. Well, boy, I was like, it's all right. Just put in PTO. I promise I will approve it. But we've built that rapport with one another. It's kind of like a weird family thing. Becca used to work with us. I was like, you ain't gonna talk about Becca. I was like, we'll be ready to go to war. I remember one time we almost went to war over Becca, because a customer came saying something crazy like, yeah, Becca did this, and I was like, hold me back. Hold me back, like, because you ain't just gonna talk about Becca like that in my presence, because I know her. So when something comes that's just totally outside of the character of the people that you grew to know and love and understand like that, it's not to say that they didn't have a bad day and things like that could happen, but you juxtapose that with the relationship that you've developed with your staff. And then, because sometimes customers be tripping. Sometimes customers be lying. And we got to take off these rose-colored glasses looking at the community as if they don't. That's my talk. So, the conclusion here. Nothing happens in a vacuum. If you're having a culture problem within your organization, there's an environment that's allowing it to grow. If you're having competency issues, there's an environment that's allowing it to grow. So the charge for each of us as leaders, we got to relook at our communication system. See if it's aligning with that comprehension system. Because, because communication is not what? It does not necessarily mean, just because it came out your mouth, does not mean it went into their ear the same way. So we got to check those things. Nothing happens in a silo. There's a reason for everything. But, and again, always remember, all the systems thinking, all the environment talking, all of that good stuff, incompetency still exists though, y'all. And you do got to remove people. Sometimes you just got to remove people. And that's sometimes hard to do within the library context because we're such an empathetically led organization. But I would hate for the whole ship to go down because this person don't know how to control their mouth. So you got to draw a strict line between the empathetic side and the hardcore management side. That's one thing that I believe coming out of retail and my undergrad being in business management and then coming into library world benefited me. I'm a manager that became a librarian. I'm not a librarian that became a manager. And I believe that little difference, that tad bit of hardness, coldness, you know what I'm saying, in the, you know, it kind of helps navigate those difficult times. But it's okay. It's okay. All right? So, when y'all leave here today and go back to your respective libraries and branches and so on and so forth, just step back for a minute and try to remove the veil of the systems that you have going on. And think about the form, the function, and the emergence. What does this problem look like? Why does this problem exist? And what's the emergence of having this problem here? It all works with anything that you put into it. I'm telling you, you're going to start seeing systems everywhere. It's going to drive you crazy a little bit, but you're going to get back to your equilibrium. I promise, sort of. Because now you think about traffic lights, that's a system. You think about your circulatory, your respiratory, that's a system. You think about the electricity and all that, everything around us at all times is a system. And if one thing is off, it's going to affect the whole. I am because we are. And if you want to learn more, I wrote a book called Libraries as Systems right here that I just released not too long ago. That's my email if you want to reach out to me, and my website, ChristopherAFleming.com, if you want me to do workshops and all that good stuff at your locations and all that good stuff as well. And we have about 7 minutes for Q&A. Thank you so much for paying attention and listening to me. Any questions, critiques, or anything like that? Damn, I'm good. I'm just
What are some other ways that you encourage feedback from your staff as the branch manager, other than, you do check-ins with your staff or your managers? How do you encourage, more feedback? What are some systems that you have built?
Yeah, the way that I tend to do it, the basic way is open door policy. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that's difficult too because, people can be really shy. Yeah. So sometimes you can just do an anonymous box. Mm-hmm. Fill this out, put the slip in the paper. I'll look at it every week or whatever the case is. And so it being an anonymous thing might give them more confidence to say what needs to be said, so they won't suffer in silence.
It's hard to get the flow back up. We have, I think at CCPL, we have all of those layers in place, and I'm in the middle, so I feel like it goes down. I don't know if it's comprehended half the time, but coming back up is hard until there's an issue. And then it's like, where did this go from? This is going on, so it's hard to encourage staff to provide feedback, but also constructive feedback, not, I don't wanna do this because it's new, it's more, like, I'm trying 1, 2, 3, but number 4 is just not working.
Yeah, that would be like constructive, right?
Right.
How can we fix this other
Yeah.
than,
That's
you know,
hard
after
to
the person who
encourage.
has the vision at the top and then the person at the bottom is like, no good. You
Right,
know, I don't like this.
which that is. like-
So, is the person out here saying that they don't like this or they don't understand this? Because that's two different things.
It's both, I think,
yeah.
yeah, it could be either,
So, them liking it is not a requirement.
right.
That's what's hard to get.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that's where a little bit of the hardness of management has to come in
Yeah.
sometimes. Look at your job description. Does it say liking what your manager says? At any part of it. You don't necessarily have to like it, but these are certain things that have to be done. So those are sometimes the tough conversations that has to happen. Now, if you say, because you're like kind of in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So if your communication works middle up, maybe you need to have that conversation with the next level that you have up, so then y'all can redesign something to come back down, like the town halls that Tamara did here or something like that. Maybe there's a redesign of the culture that needs to happen. Now that's going to be difficult because especially with people that's been there for X amount of years and you know, can't teach your old dog new tricks. All right, but you got to understand. You got to understand, like, life is movement.
Right.
And if you stay stagnant, you can. In retail world, they'll say you can get promoted to customer too. It's real. It's like that's the tough sides of management though. You know, I'm big on customer service. I'm lenient on a lot of things until I hear a customer call me and say, my staff did what? Then we got an issue. You know, especially if it's true. We really got an issue. You know, but yeah, so, you know, it's a little bit, sometimes it's difficult for the librarian that became manager to have these conversations. So look into LinkedIn Learning, see if they got classes. I'm sure they do, like on effective communication, management communication, whatever the case is. Go to YouTube. There's a lot of free options, and there's also options if your library will pay for certain courses and classes. There's a lot of things out there that can help embolden you with communicating the importance of essential duties, the importance of you being aligned with the purview of what your job description is. Because that's why you're here.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
What else we got? We got about 2 minutes.
I think it's also important for managers to remember that you may not always like the feedback that you get.
Yeah, be humble. Humble pie is delicious.
Yeah.
It might hurt your ego a little bit, but respect your staff enough that they told you the issue that you got. So don't get all defensive on them, because you might have a blind eye to it. I was like, I don't like the way that you communicate that, or my communication style is this, or whatever. Don't be. I like this. Someone's a no ego game. You know, and it's hard to strip yourself of the ego, but my purpose is to make sure that my branch runs efficiently as possible. That's more important than my feelings and my ego. So if my staff tells me something that might hurt my feelings, or my boss tells me something that might hurt my feelings, I got to take that. You know what I'm saying? You might have to step away for a minute, cool down, walk around, but then really sit and see what was actually being said and if there's actually any truth to it. And if there is, make the appropriate adjustments. Got 1 more minute, y'all. As we say in the church, all hearts and minds clear. Well, thank y'all so much for listening. My name is Chris Fleming. Please get my contact information